Wheel of Genre, the show for readers who like their short stories to start off with a bang. Right now, we are reading every short story in Harlan Ellison's anthology, Dangerous Visions, including this one, Damon Knight's Shall the Dust Praise Thee. I'm Zach, and this week I am super interested in... what is there to say about this story? I'm interested in how we are going to try to get a good, solid 20-minute conversation out of this short piece.
It's going to be a challenge. I'm Bob. I'm interested in why are we doing this Dangerous Visions project? I'm really enjoying it, to be honest. And even though it doesn't sound like it, though, this is a double header. I'm going to full disclosure. We're doing two stories. Zach and I are going to record them now. But I want to say that because I think they're very interesting to look at together. Shall the dust praise thee? And then if all men were brothers, would you let one marry your sister? Is the second title. But I think they're very interesting to compare. Damon Knight, I am super intrigued by. The story, Shall the Dust Praise Thee? Let's talk about it first. It seems to be, it's a science fiction, it's a future. We have angels, and it's very biblical, is what it seems like at first. We have angels announcing different stages of, I guess, cataclysm, or stages of, what would you call that, Armageddon. And each one is announcing something that's happening. Each seal is coming off, and God's going to appear. Finally, God comes down to earth, but what happens, Zach?
Well, he comes down to earth, and he says, I'm here, I'm God. All ye believers. But the humans are gone. There's no humans left. They say, we don't understand what happened. And it turns out that the nuclear bombs went off. The US, Russia, Britain, China, everyone shot their nukes, and there's no humans left. So they go to Britain, and they find a rock, where he raises up the rocks, and he says, let the rock speak. And then the rock says, we were here, where were you? So what we're doing here is we're retelling the book of Revelations, right? End of days, angels coming down, God pouring out wrath, angels sounding trumpets. It's straight out of Revelation. It's just the twist ending, right? It's the twist ending because we know what the story is, but oh wait, humanity has destroyed itself. This story is a scant 4 pages. It's very, very short. So I think that it's safe to say that what you get with this one is a lot of concept with a very short amount of content. Do you agree with that assessment?
I think so, but I think that might be deliberate based on Damon Knight. I'm really interested in him. He's from Oregon, so that's pretty cool. But
He's
the reason
from Baker,
I want to talk about
Oregon.
more, he's from Baker, Oregon, lived in Eugene, and then died in. No, sorry, lived in Hood River and died in Eugene. So he grew up mostly in Hood River. So we're very, very familiar with where he was. But I'm interested in his style in this because it is, it's pretty good style anyway. It gets very clear to its point, I think. Maybe not a lot happens, but there's no fluff. Whereas in the next story, there's quite a bit of fluff. And what he says, Damon Knight was really, really, really important for many different reasons. He was the founder of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America, which is SFWA. Sorry. It's a long day. He was the co-founder of the National Fantasy Fan Federation and the co-founder of Milford Writers Workshop, and also the Clarion Writers Workshop, which I've always wanted to join, just have never been able to afford. But very cool writers workshop. And he also, we should read this book, I think. Damon Knight is the editor of a anthology, but it's all essays about science fiction, and it's called In Search of Wonder, Essays on Modern Science Fiction. And what he says at the beginning is what he believes all science, well, a credo, I guess, a very important, what he thinks science fiction should do. He says this: science fiction is a field of literature worth taking seriously, and that ordinary critical standards can be meaningfully applied to it. Originality, sincerity, style, construction, logic, coherence, sanity, garden variety, grammar. And that he says a bad book hurts science fiction more than 10 bad notices or 10 bad reviews. And I think we should remember that when we go and look at, was it Kilgore Trout? No, Ted Sturgeon. When we look at Ted Sturgeon later, because he says something more ambiguous, but I think more or less the opposite. Anyway, I think his style is quite, I guess, economical or just efficient. What do you like Damon Knight's style, or do you feel like it's really not just only concept, no form, but just empty? What did you think of the story?
Well, I think it's challenging because so much of the, I mean, let's be real. There's no characters in this, right? There's no characterization, but there are
Mm,
images, and these images are appropriated from biblical books. So it's really hard to feel like this is playing by the rules of fiction, if that makes sense. I mean, it's playing by
hmm,
a rule book of fiction, a rule book of literature, but it's not playing by many of the standards that we oftentimes judge literature by. How's the plot? How's the characterization? What's the poeticism of the language? How does it rank there? Does it have an interesting message? Instead, what you get with this is uh, a remix, I would almost say, or a joke, in the sense that he's giving you a text that people are already familiar with and then twisting it. And the punchline is, God came back, but humanity had already destroyed themselves. And uh, like a good haiku, Damon Knight doesn't like stick around long enough to tell you what to think, if that makes sense. He's not there to explore
just like
it
God.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and draw out the meaning and give us like the implications of this. It ends on the cliffhanger. And I think it's
Hmm.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Damon Knight is also the person who wrote To Serve Man, the classic Twilight Zone episode
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, where it also ends on a punchline, which is, for people who haven't seen the episode, just go out and do it. But uh, aliens come down and they're giving everyone gifts. It's very welcome and received, and they're taking people back to their home world. And then they say, oh, we're obeying this credo. We're here to serve man, and someone sees a book and they say, to serve man, it's a cookbook. Uh, and it really ends with that. Like it ends like this one with a punchline. And
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. Do you feel like I'm being fair here, or do you feel like you know I'm accurately describing what's going on here? Did I miss anything?
No, I think you are being fair. Earlier, I said that he feels like God has left his hands off. I think that is kind of what Damon Knight is trying to say. It is a punchline for him, where he's saying, if there is a God, and I think Damon Knight says that there's not, in his opinion. So he says, well, God never really got involved like he should have and let us blow ourselves up. It's hard to say if it's a critique of just religion or of humanity, but I think it does feel like a joke, and it feels a little bit, though, like a prose poem, too. It reminds me a lot of the Madarin stories by David R. Bunch, which we kind of compared to Russell Edson and said it was a prose poem. Because if this is just a joke and it's a setup to a punchline, which is God never showed up on time, then it does feel like everything has led towards that, and there's no, not fluff, but there's no A plot, no, there's no B plot to this, and it is just that joke. But we enjoyed that a lot. Do you think it's an inferior joke? Does it not meet, even though it's not maybe fiction because there's no plot, there's no character, it's not a story. Does it meet the requirements of a prose poem like we thought Madarin did?
Well, if it does, it's a very different kind of prose poem, and appropriation has a long
Hmm.
history within poetry. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I feel like in both cases, what we're still dealing with are short stories with prose poem like qualities. And some prose
Hmm.
poems are all concept with that punch, that gut punch, or that twist at the end. Yeah, I mean, I could see it. I just, it's hard because all of the poeticisms of this work are by and large lifted from biblical texts. So it's like,
Hmm.
the poetic aspect is entirely in the concept here. Um,
Hmm.
but he says something in the afterword to this that really uh, stuck out to me, which is, he quote, the question asked in the story is a frivolous one to me because I do not believe in Jehovah, who strikes me as a most improbable person.
Hmm.
But it seems to me that for someone who does believe, it is an important question. And this kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Not for any like,
Mm.
you know, religious reasons or anything like that, but because he's saying that the questions asked in the story are a frivolous one. And it makes me be
Yeah.
like, well, if it's frivolous, why write it? Like, what would this story look like if it
Mm.
was a question you actually cared about or were concerned with? Would, as a reader, would I feel different about it if the author felt different about it? You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, I don't know. It's like a salesman saying, well, this product's kind of shoddy, but some people like it. It just kind of
Well,
rubs
to
the
me, it
wrong
felt like it
way.
kind of very. It does rub you the wrong way. I thought the same thing. It feels like a mocking joke because he's saying he sets up this joke, and then the punchline is anyone who was believing the story is an idiot. Like he says, "There's no reason to believe in Jehovah. It's a silly thing, and I got you." I thought it was quite mean, I guess, to the reader. But that seems to be a bit of a trend in Dangerous Visions when Harlan Ellison is calling everyone a murderer. You were the one who made me write this. You're the one
Yeah.
who likes Jack the Ripper, not me. So it seems like that Damon Knight is maybe doing that here too. What do you think? Earlier we were saying maybe it's mocking humans, or is it mocking the whole idea of religion? I liked in the afterword too when he says what his editor told him. He says, this story was written some years ago, and all I remember about it, so he hasn't even remembered like writing the story, but all I remembered about it was my agent returned it with loathing and told me I might possibly sell it to the Atheist Journal in Moscow, but nowhere
Yeah.
else. Um, One interesting that he doesn't seem to remember this, and it's just kind of in his own slush pile or in his own forgotten stories, and he sent it to Harlan. The other one is he and his editor can obviously have different opinions, but he's kind of making fun of his editor too. I don't know. Do
Yeah.
you feel like his heart's in the right place writing this story, or is it kind of a slap?
I don't know. Yeah. Well, I love the editor's remark. I love the detail about Atheist Journal in
Yeah.
Moscow. Like that was really funny to me. But yeah, yeah. Yeah, I remember reading that at a certain point in the editorial task, Harlan Ellison was desperate for material, and
Hmm.
I it's part of me thinks that it's possible that this is something that got added in to the Dangerous Visions lineup because he was desperate for material. I mean, Damon Knight doesn't even seem like he likes it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
but the other part of me says that this is actually right up the wheelhouse of every other religious story that we've seen, which is
Hmm.
kind of like religious realism, like taking the religion's claims at face value or taking Christianity's claims at face value, but then twisting it in a certain way. Before what if mankind
Hmm.
became more powerful than God, for example, or this one, what do we do with the kind of prophetic claims of Revelations if humankind has the ability to destroy itself with nuclear bombs? Which is, I guess, an interesting question, I guess, but uh, you know, but not too interesting. It's just interesting a little, not too interesting.
I would really like to read more of him. I have a feeling he is actually very good, and I also have a feel. Well, in the introduction, it seems like Harlan hates him, but it also seems like he's joking. So I'm wondering, do these two actually hate each other, or are they good friends? And my suspicion is probably they're good friends. But it also seems like Damon Knight is really a good writer and just sent him a story he didn't care about, he forgot about because he hates Harlan. Because Harlan keeps calling him things like Spoil Sport, Faker. He says Spoil Sport was born in Baker, Oregon in 1922. He was semi-educated in Hood River, Oregon public schools. He also
Keeps
says
talking
the
about his
only reason I
wife.
published him. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah. And
sorry.
he
Yeah.
says the only reason, yeah, the only reason I published him is because of his wife, who is a good person. But Damon Knight, no, I don't like him at all. What do you think of this? Do you think that they might actually dislike each other, or is he just,
I don't know. It reads like a bit to me a little. Like it seems like just kind
yeah,
of.
yeah.
Uh,
I feel like all of
I,
his
I
bits are real. I feel like all Harlan
I
Ellison's
know.
bits are
I
real.
know. That's the thing too. They feel very unsubtle sometimes. Uh, I'll say this. We just recorded
Sure.
the episode
Sure.
for Roger Zelazny's Lord of Light, and during that episode, I came to the realization that what I like with science fiction stories is a strong concept, like a one sentence. If you can tell me everything that I need to know in one sentence about this book, in Zelazny's book, it was a far future society where they've recreated kind of the Hindu pantheon, and one man who is Buddha is trying to destroy them. Great one sentence synopsis. I am there. I will read it. The issue with that book was that once you start ballooning out those sentences into chapters and a full book, it kind of fell apart. Totally fine, but I love the concept. This one also has a great, strong concept in that you can tell me in one sentence. The book of Revelations, but humanity blew itself up with nuclear bombs the day before. However, there's not much else beyond the concept here. So it's like you're really kind of left with, do you like the concept or not? There's no characters, there's no dramatic tension, there's no development. So um, I want to read more Damon Knight. And what I'm circling back to is I want to read more Damon Knight because I suspect he is a strong writer who was done dirty by the inclusion of this story in this anthology.
I think you're right. I suspect that he is really good. You know, we know the Twilight Zone episode "To Serve Man" is a classic, and it's just kind of a household name, household concept. Everyone knows that story, even if you haven't seen the episode. So he is very good at the concepts. And in creating the science fiction and fantasy writers of America, you know, he becomes an award giver, or at least he's trying to set standards for high quality science fiction. So he's trying to push it forward in kind of a almost a gatekeeper sense, which doesn't sound very good, but at least a judge, I guess. I think he's trying to be a judge of fiction to make it better. And I think Ted Sturgeon might be doing the opposite. And many of the writers that we've been reading kind of feel like they're doing the opposite too, because they do love their community, the club. They want to push each other's work. Harlan Ellison seems to be choosing a lot of stuff that's not that high quality. But that's kind of fun too, because it's friends pushing each other's work forward. And then it just happened to get really famous. That's kind of cool. But I want to keep his edict or his credo in mind that a bad book hurts science fiction more than 10 bad reviews. I want to keep that in mind when we move forward for Ted Sturgeon and through the rest of Dangerous Visions.
Absolutely. Well, let's carry on. Talk to you later, Bob.
Talk to you later, Zach.